We all have a story to tell and a road of discovery and recovery that we can share. When tragedy or hardship strikes, we must dig deep down, and we have to find our inner strength and voice to make a change, to heal the wound, to find the joy and passion to live fully, despite the challenges that have asked us to grow and to change. These stories make us unique and inspire others looking for their own inner strength. My guest today is a very accomplished soprano performer and coach with a long list of performances and collaborations that showcase her divine talent. Clancy Cox has lived in several parts of the United States over the years, but currently calls the state of New York her home. Her journey began in singing when she was 11 years old. I'm sure it was before that, but came with the audition of Les Mis. But the real story that brings her to you today is about her recovery from a car accident that left her with chronic pain and disability, and she couldn't find any relief from it. Searching for the answer to her healing, Clancy began to explore yoga and then to bring back the power of her voice and the singing to bring that all into a healing power that was possible. Prepare yourself for some personal discoveries today as Clancy weaves us through our innate healing potential through the power of sound. You're listening to Be Well with Michelle Greenwell, and this is Season 2, Episode 12, The Power of Healing Sounds with Clancy Cox. Clancy, thank you so much for being here today. It is lovely to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I have been so honored to be asked and to think about what I might share with your audience.
Oh, it's beautiful. Now, we always start with a cup of inspiration. So what have you got today in your mug?
I have this mug that I think is beautiful. I think it was created as a collaboration with the New York Botanical Gardens. So it has this really pretty print on it. And I'm drinking thé de moi, which is supposedly a blend of green and black tea that was created for Tibetan monks. So I try to ease on the caffeine as we get through the day. And so the mix of the green and black tea is really nice.
Oh, beautiful. And the Botanical Gardens in New York, I've been there. They're just so amazing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful. I chose Rising Tides today from my Tea with Intention line of teas. And I did that because of the waves of the ocean and thinking about the sound waves that we're going to create today and what that frequency can do for healing. So Rising Tides is one I always go to when I feel like I just need to kind of be wrapped in the ocean. And I can't quite get to it, although it's only 5 minutes away, but sometimes that's not possible. And then I added it into my thank you mug. So a little bit of gratitude, but this is actually from a group here, the L'Arche group, which is for people with health challenges, mental challenges. And they have these incredible group homes. And I've had the privilege of being in them to do some healing work with them and some movement. And there's just such a lovely community to be able to be with. So I wanted to bring kind of that collective piece in when I chose mine today. So cheers, Clancy. Thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so let's get started. You started singing as a young person and auditioning for shows. So I know for listeners who are not part of the performing arts, that's like a foreign kind of thing. For me, it's one of those things that gets me so excited because watching kids audition and get into parts is always so beautiful to see, and then the growth that comes from there. Do you want to tell me a little bit about how your whole singing performance part of your life came to be?
Sure. Yes. I always loved to sing, like many children do. And I was introduced to Les Misérables from a friend in, elementary school, and just fell in love with the drama of it. And this story, it's so funny for a young child to be so interested in this idea of, redemption and the way that things can work themselves out generationally. But I loved it. I even read the Victor Hugo novel, which is, about that thick when I was, 12 or 13. But yeah, I loved the music. It really just appealed to me, the music and the drama of it, and the young children in it, of course, were like a little hook for me because I could identify with them. And yeah, I just listened to it all the time, and my parents were very kind and indulgent to let me. And my parents are not stage parents at all, but my mom, I grew up in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. So she saw there was a National Theater touring division of Les Mis that was doing auditions. And so she got her photographer friend to make a headshot for me. And I had been involved in community theater. I think my parents thought it would be a good outlet for me, a little exuberant child. And so they had always been supportive in the community theater realm. And we waited around all day. It was a real cattle call situation. And I didn't have very much experience, and I had no private singing lessons or anything like that at that point. But I made it through a round or two, just based on my audition itself. And I think that opened my mom's eyes to, maybe that's something we should let her do more of, or, start some kind of formal study. So serendipitously, I think a few weeks after that, I had spent the night at a friend's house, and she had a voice lesson the next day. And I went with her to this voice lesson, and the voice teacher, Sandra Harness, asked me to sing as well, and ended up talking to my parents and inviting me to be part of her children's choir, which is still going, still happening. It's called the World Children's Choir, and they sing beautifully. And Sandra Harness knows a lot about the developing voice. And so I'm really grateful that she was my first voice teacher, because a lot of people actually end up hurting their voices through formal study by trying to be too powerful too soon, by manipulating the breath so much that they start to introduce all kinds of unnatural tensions, and through singing from muscular power as opposed to the feelings of resonance that feel really good when you're singing and you're experiencing resonance. It's such a wonderful feeling, but when you're singing from the throat and really pressurizing from below and above, this is a type of singing that I think is really celebrated in our culture, but it is not a formula for longevity or even enjoying singing, and it's certainly not a formula for blending with other singers. So it's really interesting to me. That a lot of the joy of singing can be trained right out of you once you start formal study. And I think sometimes that happens with dance or other, for other physical, or even with yoga, when things aren't balanced, and when you don't really know what your goal is, maybe. But yeah, I really find singing as a wonderful tool to get back in my body. But I can tell when people are using it to further get out of their body. And I think that's what leads to, vocal issues, vocal problems, people losing their voices. So, yeah. But you can actually sing your way to better health with certain vocal exercises as well that are very therapeutic. So
that leads to a really interesting, because that was one of the things as a dance instructor, there was the way I was supposed to teach certain things, but things didn't resonate with me, which is why I ended up developing the tools that I did. But wouldn't it be delightful if the singing, the innocent singing that children do, if you were able to just bring that around to that healing component first. And then they say, now I want to do more. But they already have that resonating inside. Instead of they're singing along with the nursery rhymes at the beginning or some of the pop songs that they're going to be listening to on the radio, but then to really, really shift it. Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. Mm-hmm.
Yes, due to some, I think, of the habits and tensions that can come in when you're classically trained from a young age. And I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but when I went to undergraduate school, there's the musical theater is completely separate from the classical track. And if you're a singer, the vocal performance seems to be all about opera, which is beautiful. It's a beautiful, rich, wonderful tradition. However, I really think that students should be aware that when they're pumped into that track, do you have the kind of voice that's going to be able to sing over an orchestra 5 times a week, 7 times a week? Because if not, it's just really good to know there are many different ways to make a living singing, and they might not be, you might not be someone who wants to go to Europe and, and sing in one of the opera houses. And, it's a lot of time away from, family, friends, etc. So I became very passionate about teaching my voice students who were auditioning for music school to really find out what they want, from that, because it's a big commitment, not only from you, but from your whole family, if you really are going that classical track. And if you already know that you're not, then there are many ways to study what you want to study, including apprenticeship. If there's a voice, a singer that you really love, see if you can go apprentice yourself to them. See if you can, visit them and really see what their life is like before jumping into college, which I just am not. I see so many voices ruined in school. I see so many voices not nurtured. And I think that part of that is not having, like you said, that really healthy, vital, joyful voice that you have as a child, which is so extreme. I mean, the way that kids play around with nasality and breathiness and huge volume and really tiny, like soft volume, and imitating booming lower voices and imitating really squeaky voices. That's such a way to stay healthy, is to keep exploring, the range of everything, and not necessarily to be pushed into, okay, here's your Fach, here's your, your soubrette soprano, so this is all you're going to sing now. It's not necessarily healthy. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you're sharing in your classes, tell me a little bit about what makes your class different from some of the traditional ones. I think we're getting a taste already, but I'd like for you to articulate even more.
Well, so my chanting workshops are different because they are for anyone. They are for anyone who wants to have a more easy and kind relationship with the voice. And so you need no experience. You need no prior experience to come to my workshops. And I'll tell you why I started them is very recently, back in October, I had this revelation. And it was, in the beginning of COVID, I was part of a quartet in a church where I sing. And it was a big shift away from the choral music that we were preparing weekly to now churches and singing is a super spreader event. So we were streaming and no one was coming into the church live. And so it was just the 4 parts, and we were mic'd and we were far away from each other. And there was something exciting about it at first because, when you're the only part, you better know your notes. You better be blending with the rest of the singers. It was a real project, every week that I just really could embody the music that we were offering. And I really liked that. And eventually it became a lot, it was a lot of hours every week. And it was kind of sad that no one was there live. Everything was streaming. And also going from teaching voice lessons 1-to-1 in person to over Zoom, I was beginning to lose some of the joy of singing. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of it for me is being in person and the blend, like you said, the waves of the ocean, the sound waves. I'm really excited that there is such an emergence of interest in sound healing, sound bathing. I'm in a really rural area, and in some of the yoga studios near me, they're offering, crystal bowl sound baths and things like that. So I am all about the live, in-person, feeling of the music. And I'm really grateful for technology. I mean, that's what's enabling you and I to speak and look at each other right now. However, with really feeling your sound and the healing aspect of sound, I'm a really big believer that it should be in person. So after the initial, like, oh, this is exciting, it just the joy of it began to wane. And I actually ended up taking a break over the summer from performing and from teaching, because it's a real big part of my identity, the joy of it. And it was gone. And I suspect this happened to a lot of people in the arts during COVID, is just, and not that COVID is gone, but you know what I mean. In the beginning, scary parts of it where the bottom just fell out. I had been teaching choir class at a community college, teaching voice lessons, teaching group voice lessons, teaching music history, and it all went online. And then the next semester, it just disappeared because there was not enough people. There was not enough enrollment, which is also happening everywhere. But yeah, so I just had this sort of at sea feeling, like, how can I regain the joy of this thing that I have loved since I can remember? And I needed to take a little break from it. And then in October, I had this revelation, and that was, there's a big difference between performing and offering. Mm-hmm. And offering is from your body. You feel it. There's a sacred element to it. It has nothing to do with commerce. And it's a feeling, and it feels more pure and more joyous. And that the inner child artist is, having a field day with expression. And there's just, and it's sharing something. And I had realized that almost every piece of my singing had become a performance. And I want to say I'm really grateful for all of the performing opportunities that I've had, because I think that being able to overcome nervousness, over and over again, having to realize the ways that I can get in my own way in terms of anxiety. And so much of it has to do with intention. You know, if I'm what I learned in my mid-20s when my stage fright finally began to ebb is that the key to that was picking my own repertoire and just saying, oh, I love these art songs that are, you know, I love Robert Schumann and Clara Schumann. I'm going to do a recital that is composer couples, you know, so putting that together and putting a sort of music history lecture piece of things in together with this music and offering the context of it and just explaining why I loved it so much, why it spoke to me. Now that was when, yes, it was still a performance, but I was sharing something real and authentic that just lit me up. And that's when it really became, you know, worth it to figure out, how do I get out of my own way and just share? You know, how do I make this an offering instead of a performance? So yeah, as recently as October, I just said, I need to find a way to get back to offering. And I'm grateful to be able to perform, to be able to stand up in front of people and share something. It's a wonderful thing to be able to do. But how do I get back to that offering? And it coincided with a chant workshop that I went and did with Jurian Hughes at the Kripalu Yoga Center in Massachusetts. Not to be confused with the Kripalu Yoga Center in Adams, New York, which is quite near me, and where I'll be offering some chanting workshops in March, April, and May. But I just, that was a big thing for me. And I wonder, I would bet that that many people are going through something like that during this strange COVID time. You know, you have these easy explanations for, you know, oh, people aren't working, people don't want to work anymore, all of these things. And I'm thinking, no, people want more offering in their life. They realized the extent to which they were performing and how that performance is missing something. You know, performing in their job or in their roles, you know, any number of roles, you know, family, friend, parent. I think that people are maybe there's a collective. I feel that there's this collective sense of something's missing. Where is the joy? I think of that Talking Heads song, you know, you know, is this my beautiful house? This is my beautiful wife. Like, you know, the days go by song of just waking up in your life and just thinking, how did I get here? What is this? So, yeah. So I just thought I love chanting. Chanting it's a puja. It's an offering from your soul. And it's very much in the yoga tradition that I was trained in. There are chants. And so I would love to offer some call and response chanting that is simple to do and that your listeners would be able to do at home. Would you be interested?
Oh, this sounds very interesting. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So yeah, there's actually a few pieces before the call and response that I would love to just share. I'm wondering if my heating system is loud. Shall I just go turn it off so that it's not in the background? Okay, sorry about that.
Sure. While she's doing that, I just thought I would comment about giving an offering. And very often in performance, we often say we give a performance, which is expending that energy to the audience. And then we have offering. And so what Clancy's really talking about is something in the program that I developed with Natasha Polomsky, my business partner, Raising Bioenergetic Awareness. We actually go through some exercises on the difference between giving and the offering and how people receive something that's given to them and how they receive something that's offered. It's quite an exercise, and it's on the part of the person who's who's giving or offering, but then also on the receiving end. And there's a lot of real personal development you get from it's just two words, right? But it's energetically, it's not. It's completely different. And I'm sure many people who are performing on a regular basis, that the way that they survive is by finding that joy and that love of the offering, because otherwise you would be so depleted at an end of a week of giving that it would be really hard to maintain a career for a long period of time.
Oh, yes. And I think that's what made it hard is during COVID, when there are no live audiences. So you don't have that exchange. Yes, as a performer, a musician, an artist, you are offering, but it's not an offering unless there's someone receiving, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and that exchange, I think that's the thing. The offering, there's an inherent connection in offering, whether it's between you and your spiritual belief of whatever the divine power is. So there's that relationship between you and the divine, or you and other people who are also divine creatures. That connection is so important, and figuring out what feels good to you personally. And yeah, I think we're in a time of imbalance in terms of giving and receiving.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to genderize it, because I think both genders are having a really hard time right now. But I do see, at least in the culture that I'm surrounded by, that the divine feminine is really there's nothing nurturing it back into being balanced. So a lot of the women I know are over giving, people pleasing, giving from an empty well, and feeling tired, burnt out, and resentment due to that. And so that's another thing. Chanting, I think, allows you to receive more than you're giving out, and just fill up your well so that you have something. And we should all be giving from an overflowing well if we want to stay healthy and not resentful, that somehow we have to find a way to fill our well. And for me, that has always been singing, kind of pulling in my attention from everything else, and just, feeling that boundary around myself, this little force field, and filling up, getting connected with source as I feel it, and the tones and the vibrations of singing, and how you can feel it in your own body. If you put your hand to your throat, you can feel that buzzing. And you can feel your breathing if you put a hand right, on your low belly. So yeah, but before getting into that, let's just do a simple three ohms. So they're different tones, and I'll start one, and if you want to join in, we're just going to ohm until we run out of breath. And I invite you to breathe through the nose in between. And you'll hear me do the next tone, and then just join the next tone. So it's 3 ohms.
Okay. So those 3 different tones, one sort of medium, one a little bit higher, and then one a little bit lower,
you can feel them in different places in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully in the show notes, or there's some way that your audience who hasn't read the article that you wrote about the different tones that are ascribed to different vertebra. It's so valuable for people to think about that. So there's a Vedic theory idea that I'm just going to focus on one of them because you can really fall down the rabbit hole. But for the seven chakras along the spine, that there is a vowel sound that corresponds to each of the chakras. So there's also another layer to this, which is a consonant sound, which also corresponds to each chakra. I'm going to go with the vowels because the consonants are for energizing each chakra. The vowel sounds are for balancing each chakra. And so if anyone is working with someone who is so attuned that they can say, oh, your third chakra is, doesn't have enough energy, so we need to activate it, then they would be maybe working with you with those consonant sounds. But because we are in the format we are, you can't really overdo the balancing, calming part of things. And from what I see, people are overdoing most of the time, it seems like. So just calming and balancing. So the idea is the first chakra, so the root chakra, color red, that the vowel sound is O. The second chakra, so the color orange, and it's where your reproductive organs are, creativity. That one is U. So those lowest two are U and O. And then coming up to the solar plexus, so how you show up in the world, the color yellow, that is A. No, that one is Ah. Sorry, that one is Ah. And then up to the heart, green, A. And then the throat chakra is E. That's the color blue. And then the next two are not exactly vowel sounds, but they are liquid consonants. So the idea of the third I is M sound, and the crown chakra is an N. In some lineages, it's an NG sound, with the tongue up in the back. So there's one chant. The words are Om Namah Shivaya, and they actually correspond with the chakras coming down. So I'll do it once and then we'll explain it, and then we'll just do it a few times together. So if you're chair bound, then that's just fine. I would invite you to place your heels a little bit forward of your knees and just feel how that feels on the spine. Sometimes if the heels are kind of tucked under, then we have this curving and forward kind of collapsing of the body. But when the heels are in front of the knees, and ideally our hips would be higher than the knees, but in many chairs you won't have this. In your car, you probably don't have this. But that's ideal if your hips can be above the knees ergonomically, but that's okay either way. So inhale the arms up. Om Namah Shivaya. Om. So Om is just all around you, the universe. Om, the universal sound, the Big Bang sound. Om. N is going to be that crown chakra. Na, the M of the third eye, ma. She, the E vowel for the throat chakra. And then here it's not exact. We say vi. So the heart sound is A, but we're saying vi. And then ya, ah, is the solar plexus. So right there where your ribs meet. And then U for the second chakra, and O for the root chakra. So sometimes in the morning, I'll do 7 of those, and I'll be thinking of the root chakra first. I'll be thinking of the color red as I inhale my arms up. Om Namah Shivaya. Ooh, I'm thinking the color red. I'm thinking of, your root chakra might have to do with generational stuff, your ancestors, your family, it's survival stuff. So just thinking of that O and the color red, and just letting things be at peace. And yeah, so I do that for every chakra. And, it's funny. My father is a very scientific man. He's a farmer. And so, and my mom just, she gives me a lot of, or always has given me just a lot of leeway and creativity, and, just, hears me out with my spiritual ideas and my spiritual seeking. And it's funny because I sort of have them both in my head. And with yoga, it's wonderful because there's so much current Western scientific research that shows that these thousands of years old ideas are actually scientific. Yoga is a science. But what I love about chanting is when you know the words to something, and you're no longer worried about the words, and they're just kind of flowing, and you can be sort of on a physical autopilot because there's just a muscle memory of how the words feel. There is this beautiful coherence that starts to happen between your heart rate variability and brainwave states. So chanting is a way that, in this world where anxiety is a real problem. I forget what the number is, but, so many people just self-identify as being anxious, as really feeling it in their body, and that it is, it's hurting their quality of life, but mm-hmm. But you do have these tools, these beautiful tools, and they're free, and you can do them, by yourself. Don't do them when driving, but, in a little place in your house by yourself, you have access to these amazing tools that are thousands of years old that actually can help your heart and brain, fall in love with each other. And I just love that. I think it's very powerful. There's many things we are not in control of, but that you are always in control of your own state. You can always make a tiny choice to just shift your mood in a little better direction, a little more supportive feeling. And what I love is, I just spoke about having, each of my parents' voices in my head, and my father being like, well, that's not very scientific, honey. I'm like, actually, Dad, it is. The chakras, they're actually major nerve centers of the body, so there is, physical science and anatomy that shows that these ancient symbols are really helpful and true. And, when you have something that you need to say to a loved one, and it's hard to say, you can feel that block. You can feel that pain and that block, and it's hard to swallow in your fifth chakra. I mean, that is energy that when you finally do have that hard conversation, you feel it. You feel the relief physically in your body. So with that being said, I would love to teach you the Hari Om chant, which is from integral yoga. That's the lineage of yoga that I studied and became certified to teach. And it's beautiful because we talked about where, each sound and where it corresponds. So the ha is, I know I'm sitting, but the ha is the solar plexus area there. So just put your hand right there where your ribs meet and say, ha.
Ha.
What do you feel?
You got that push out.
Yes. Accent. You can really feel something happening there. Ha, ha. That's all I ever want my voice students to think about breath support. It's just, ha, it's right there, or if you really can't find it, then you just bark like a dog a couple times and it's like, oh, that's where it is. Okay. I want people to learn where it is, and then I want to forget about it. Because if you are constantly overpressurizing and thinking about diaphragmatic breathing, which I have a big problem with because you have zero conscious control of your diaphragm. Just, the next time you get the hiccups, you'll really feel you cannot control the diaphragm. All you can control is release of the breath out, which just makes space. It makes, it creates the right tension and space to then just receive the breath in. Don't take your breath and don't overfill. There are ways to build the lungs, and I believe in them. I believe in when you're walking, time your in breaths, time your out breaths, try to get them longer. But when you're singing, do not over intake air, because all that does is before you sing, you pressurize, and then you've totally manipulated your onset of the sound. So if you are a recovering singer like me, one of the most helpful exercises was from Ted Diamond. And he said, instead of that feeling of taking a breath in and then something weird happens before you start to sing, just breathe in and breathe out and then start singing. So you're already breathing out and then start singing. And that will help you rebalance that, and hopefully let go of that habit of pressurizing before you sing, because it just doesn't feel good. And guess what? It doesn't sound good either. Exactly. And when it does feel good, it does sound good. So yeah. Anyway, sorry, I got off track. I'm having such fun talking to you. So the ha is of the Hari Om. So I think of, if you've ever done karaoke, that horizontal bouncing ball that shows you what syllable you're on. So I just turn it vertical. So for the ha, you've got that at the solar plexus. The ri brings that energy from down there up to the throat. And the om is, the M sound of the third eye, but the om is all around you. So you're really lifting the sound, and the karaoke ball just keeps moving from ha, ri, om, ha, ri, om. So I'll have my hands in when I'm doing the first part of the call and response, and then I'll open my hands and we'll do it together for the response. So I don't want to go too low. Okay. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari, Hari, Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari, Hari, Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari 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 Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Hari Om. Hari Hari Om. Hari Hari Om.
I'm giggling thinking about my family will be saying, Mom sang. She sang on a podcast. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, listening to your voice is just so beautiful. It's just, that was so, was, I was going to say spiritual, and I was like, I don't know if that's the right word, but it's just lifts you right up. Yeah.
and that's the idea, is using your own voice. You can lift your spirits. It is uplifting. The purpose of that chant in the beginning of the 90-minute integral yoga practice is, it's in the beginning. So there's the Om, the 3 Ohms, and then there's that chant. And nobody's forced into doing it. You're still getting the benefit just by being in the room and hearing other people do it. But there's something about that allows you to actually release your attention and your energy, and kind of reclaim and pull back in your energy and your awareness of your own body and all of the energy it takes to get any place. There's the getting ready energy and the getting there energy, and just keeping yourself safe as a defensive driver in the car on the way to a place. And, there's all of the thoughts, of our monkey minds. And then once you get to the place and you do a call and response chant, you can be there. You can actually be there.
Mm-hmm.
You can let go of all the things in the world that you're going to do later that day or that you already did that day. And they'll be there for you when you return. But just for a moment, you can be more present. And I understand not making time and space for that, because it actually makes you confront the things that aren't working in your life, which, darn it, darn it, we're going to be forced to confront at some point. I like to confront them when I have a little bit of a choice about what to do about it, as opposed to, when my body's refusing to work or I'm, too depressed to get out of bed. I prefer to come back into my body and check in, and your body will tell you what needs to change.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't need to look outside for it. It's you really do have all those answers, but just the idea of attunement. It's such a musical word, tuning a stringed instrument. We do that with our spines. Just simple breathing. Inhaling. When you're extending and exhaling, when you're flexing. You're tuning your spine. Yeah. And yeah.
It's interesting that you said it that way, because I never actually thought about the breath in the response necessarily of tuning the spine with the breath. I've thought of it different tools, right? But just the way you said it, because often too, I'll be doing things with how much space is between each vertebra and put that space within it. And that happens with the breath. Because if you're not breathing well, the space gets smaller and compact. But when you expand that, then you have this lovely resonance space for the frequencies of each of those bones to be able to vibrate at. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that's neat. That's neat that you bring that up, because I have my students do some plane crossing exercises, and just they're very simple, but this idea that you're standing, you feel your feet, and you start to breathe in as you come up onto your toes and breathe out as you come back to your heels. So you're actually doing two planes right there. You're going up and down, and you're also coming forward and back, and you're breathing that whole time. In our modern lives, almost everything is in front of us, and almost everything is coming at us, with screens. So we are intaking a lot of information, both through our ears and our eyes. And that's another way that chanting, I think, can really help to balance the nervous system, is that you're creating something from the inside, so you're, and you can close your eyes and chant. You can give your eyes a rest and sort of balance the way that information is incoming and the way that you have to process so much information. Chanting can be a little bit of a break from that. And the words are usually very simple. So there's not a lot of mental energy to memorizing them. It's just, they're just usually very simple, very pure vowels. And moving, they help you move that energy along the spine and connect your chakras too. I mean, how many of us identify with, I'm in my head. I'm just in my head all day long,
Yes. Yeah.
I'm so cerebral, and then, maybe other people say, I just make these emotional decisions. My head and my heart are not connecting. My heart will make a decision that my head regrets, or my head makes a decision and I didn't really think about how I'd actually feel. So how beautiful to have, chants that connect those, all the chakras being in balance is important. But I see lately a big disconnect between people's hearts and heads.
Yeah. And you're right with that idea of what's coming at you and then what you're bringing in. And then if you bring it in, but you don't actually let it go, so it comes in and then it just keeps building, then that tension within the body becomes more. And that breath then also becomes tighter. And I know for lots of people, if they don't take those breaks at the computer, they may think they're getting a lot accomplished. But that holding of the breath is diminishing the capacity and really changing their viewpoint of the decisions they make or the way that they feel about whatever it is they're working at, and then how that's going to resonate with the rest of the body. how it functions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And just being at a screen and just interfacing only with the front body, it shortens us in front. And so that changes the shape of the lungs, the capacity of the lungs. And you may know this already. I took a biology class a few years ago where I learned that I think up until fairly recently, biologists, doctors, the belief was that your red blood cells are only made in the femur bone. So red blood cells completely important to how you feel and oxygenating the body. It was believed that they were only formed in the femur bones of the body. But now I think maybe since the 60s, it's been known that as much as 30% of your red blood cells are actually made in the lungs. Only in the epithelial cell, the very outermost cells of the lungs, but that you're making red blood cells there. And so of course it feels good to sing because you're breathing, and it just it opens up your chest and gets into the apex of the lungs. So yeah, that arm motion that we did before Om Namah Shivaya, I mean, just doing that.
So you're taking your hands, just for those people that are on the podcast you can't see, taking your hands up the outside and then bringing the palms together and bringing them down the center.
Yeah, a sun breath. So yeah, coming from, your arms are maybe down at your sides and then opening them, expanding till your arms are in a T. And then you just keep going up until your palms reach, and then exhaling, palms are in a prayer position all the way down to your center. And just doing that a couple of times, because it increases awareness of the back body and the proprioceptive muscles. And it's really fascinating, I find. In 2019, I got my master's in elementary education, and I was kind of amazed when I did my student teaching in 3 different schools, but just noticing that the kids that were labeled as having a learning disability, they don't know where their bodies are in space. So helping them with these plane crossing exercises, the whole class benefits, by the way. Nobody needs to be singled out. The whole class, everyone will benefit by just the exercise I talked about, inhaling up onto the tiptoes, exhaling back onto the heels, yeah, this idea, I help my voice students when they're very nervous about something, or they're just not in their body. Maybe they're really fidgety and, not in their body. I always ask if it's okay for me to put my hand, between their shoulder blades, and that's the back heart space. And I say, meet my pressure. So, while they're singing, I just, I'm behind them, and I tell them to lean back against me as I place my hand there. And you would not believe how it fixes pitch problems. It fixes support problems. It fixes phrasing, because all of a sudden they're not thinking about their song. They're aware of their back body. Mm-hmm. And it tells them where they are in space, and that allows them to use their resonance. All of a sudden, they'll just be more aware of this cupola of sound that you can lift when you're singing, and you can start to feel it all around you. But we really, in our modern lives, we need to feel our back body. And I think that's part of the reason that yoga really helps people, or any movement, dance, anything where all of a sudden, you're in a group and you have to be aware of people around you. I think group sports develops this ability as well, of helping people to know where they are in space. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So I know you came from an injury, and many of us who end up in the healing modalities have this way that we're trying to find that way back and that way to bring everything forward. So do you want to talk a little bit about how yoga came in to assist you with that chronic pain, and then how it linked with the voice and just that little bit of that voyage?
Sure. Well, the most dangerous thing we can do, right, is drive a car. So, this was back in 2007. I had just bought a car. It was a used car. It was my dream car. It was a little Saab 9.3 hatchback. And traffic was stopped in the tunnel headed toward the San Francisco Bridge, and the Golden Gate Bridge. And so traffic was stopped in there, which you couldn't see. And so I stopped and I saw a car, approaching behind me. And I said, oh, they're not going to be able to stop because they were going so fast. So anyway, I was rear-ended and pushed into the car in front of me, and they were pushed into the car in front of them. So it was pretty high speed. I was stopped, but the car behind me was pretty fast. So, and it was one of those things, no one was hurt, no ambulances came. It was just one of those, annoying, let's exchange insurance situations. But over the next few weeks, that whiplash feeling started. And so it was part of my insurance to go see a chiropractor. So I was doing that, but it was very discouraging because it was getting worse. It was getting worse. And it's really interesting. I had actually always resisted yoga. It had been recommended throughout my formal study as a singer because it's wonderful for posture, for body awareness, for stage presence, for breathing. I mean, there's all these reasons that singers love yoga, but for some reason, I just really poo-pooed it. It's like, I'm not interested in that crunchy stuff. What are you talking about? I did not want to hear it. And I actually would get annoyed and offended when people were like, have you ever thought of yoga? I was like, what is wrong with me that people keep saying this to me? It's like, it's like when people are into their own therapy and tell you that you should do therapy. And it's like, well, what's wrong with me that you're saying that I need therapy? So I had always resisted it. But, even going to a chiropractor, I think was, 2 or 3 times a week for many, many weeks. And I was not getting relief. And I just thought, well, I have a yoga studio a couple blocks from where I live. I'll just try it. So it's amazing how chronic pain will open your mind, to say, oh, what can I do? And I went, and it was amazing to me now when I think about it, how self-conscious I was and how long there was a real disconnect. I was not in my body. And I don't think it was just that car accident. There are many reasons we vacate the body, and trauma is relative, but I think a lot of us have trauma that makes our body not be a place we want to be. Mm-hmm. And I think that car accidents are hard that way because, the body just says, oh, this set of muscles hurts. So I'm just going to kind of like withdraw from those, and then other muscles can overcompensate. And then you have this imbalance in the body, but you're designed to run away from an event, right? Your human body evolved to be able to run away, repair later. But I think with car accidents, it's such a weird thing for how the body did evolve, so I think the brain actually disconnects with the muscles or the area that got hurt. Which is why muscle testing, works for some people. If a practitioner really knows their anatomy and they say, meet my pressure, and they can figure out, oh, their brain is really disconnected with the supraspinatus, what's going on here? Anyway, I would have to arrive 20 minutes early so I could get a corner spot because I did not want anyone looking at me. I did not want to be, up front and center. I felt so disconnected. So when the teacher would say your left arm and this with your right leg, I noticed how long it took me to see what they were doing and then mirror that in my own body. So something really was disconnected. And, I have a feeling it was long before the car accident, but sort of thank goodness for that car accident because it brought me to an open-mindedness about yoga. So I joined that gym and I started doing yoga, I think 6 times. I think they had 6 classes a week and I just went to every one. And it was the only thing that gave me relief from the whiplash. And I just am a real believer in it now. And I noticed too that if I go a few days, I have a whole morning practice, but if I go a few days where I skip it, I can feel it. I can feel it in that area that did get hurt in that accident. So I know that daily practice really does help me keep my brain connected to those muscles and help me stay free of pain. So I really believe in it. And I didn't know, I had that very Western idea of yoga as just it's a physical practice. Very few of my first teachers included even an Om in the class. So it was really, that's part of that California. Yeah. That California ideal of, get that yoga booty, get that yoga body. But I'm really glad that I was open-minded enough to do that. And then every once in a while, a teacher would include a little chant. And I was in San Francisco. There's a wonderful Bhakti yoga teacher named Rusty Wells. And I went to one of his classes, and that was one of the first time, there were people drumming and there was call and response chanting, some of the more intricate ones. And I just thought, wow, if I had come here a few years ago, I would not be into this. I would be questioning it all. I would be not having a great time. But because yoga had helped me so much with the physical pain, it opened my mind to some of the more spiritual aspects to it. And I'm so glad. I'm so glad because it adds so much to my life now. Go to a wild Bhakti yoga class with chanting and live drums, and you really just feel so great afterwards. It's wonderful.
I had the privilege of several times doing drumming with tap dancing.
Oh, cool.
And it's the same actual response too. And in my work with dance and movement, what you can do with your feet and what tap dancing can do for your body is so amazing. But you add the drums to it, and then you just let go of the habits or the patterns that hold you in your movement positions, or the way that you move from one position to another can let go, because the drum just pulls you out of those habits that have saved you and held you in that safety position, and show you that you don't actually have to be there anymore. And it's such an interesting experience, but the drums are so fabulous. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's, it probably does have to do with those sound waves. And, drums are pitched. So yeah, the actual pitch might be allowing, more freedom with some of the, some of the vertebrae. That's beautiful. And that
Yeah.
makes so much sense. My last yoga chanting workshop was so fun and wonderful because there was a woman there who she just when we learned the chant, she just started drumming on the floor with her hands. And you could feel people just respond to that. And then because she was doing that, other people felt free to do something rhythmic. And then other people started adding a harmony to the chant. So yeah, I just think that's part of what makes us human is, experiencing those rhythms and not just having to process things from the outside coming in. But I think that the key part of healing from a lot of different things that hurt us is creating something. Mm-hmm. Creating something, even if it's just a little sound with your voice or a little rhythm on the floor, but just you're creating that's coming from inside of you. So instead of just everything coming in, you're creating something and putting it out there. I think that's really important to balance in our lives, and a key part of not adopting a victim narrative about the things that have happened to you. I think I see a lot of people stuck there. And that's another reason I want to make chanting and using your voice more accessible to people, is that it can get you out of that victimhood narrative. And you may have been a victim, but you can choose, you can choose right now to create something else, to create a different energy in your life. And, one of the first steps is just saying, I have a lot more control over how I feel inside, and I can have these little tools. I can chant, or I can tap a little rhythm, or I can move my body, and not just stay stuck, literally or figuratively. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm thinking back to at the beginning of our conversation when we were talking about performance and offering. And one of my privileges being in New York one visit was to be able to attend a show where every seat had a drum in it. Ooh. And you were expected to create the performance. And it was such an enlightening experience. And you're expected, one side of the room is going to play this rhythm and the other side's got to play this rhythm. So you better be ready. And you better be ready to give it with your all. And so they weren't accepting just a little bit of participation. It was wholehearted. And anyway, that was one of my favorite shows because, again, it wasn't about you're there to watch the performance and to clap at the end and say, thank you very much. You're there to participate, and they're offering you the opportunity to be involved, and you have the opportunity to say, yeah, I want to be involved, and I want to be involved with this whole room at the same time. And it's one of those things that really stood out for me, in the different performances I've seen over the years, and the things that I actually can remember, and the ones that, I went there, but I don't remember much. That always stands out. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is, you're not just an individual in your seat, passively accepting the entertainment. You're connected with everybody, and you can feel it, and you can feel it when you're off too, right? Like, oh, my rhythm is not the same as, somebody next to me, and you get elevated by someone who does have that, innate sense of rhythm. You can be elevated just by, being near them. And I think that's something we do with our voices too. You would think a group of people singing, that it would somehow magnify any of the dissonances, magnify any of the voices that maybe are under the pitch or over the pitch. But actually, it somehow smooths out any of our quote unquote imperfections. It smooths them out, and the sum is bigger than the parts, and I think that's something so beautiful about singing, about the vocal arts, is that we create something more beautiful together. Yeah.
And it's even evident in the couple examples that you gave us, because there was no way I would have been able to hit the pitches that you hit. But because you led, it was like I could find my way into that note, right? And then hold the note. And for those people that think they can't sing, it's just that, like you said, it's coming into that resonance and being open to be in the resonance. And if you can't find that note, then that's an experience, right? Of how do I leave myself in this box that I've created, and how do I allow myself to open up for that possibility that note is there for me, because we all have the ability to make the notes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. Hearing someone else do something, seeing someone else do something. That holding that space, that space that's built. Because as a singer, it does feel like you're kind of moving into space with pitches and singing and phrases. It does feel like what does that space feel like? Am I going to get into the right space? It's a really neat combination. Again, a balance of what you're creating, what you're sounding and what you're hearing. Mm-hmm. And I love that you can be in a group of people and your own voice gets lifted and elevated because you're listening to what's happening around you, as well as creating sound from within you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want people to experience that. I think it's a pretty common issue that people have, that they think they can't sing. Mm-hmm. And I would just love for people who think they can't sing to, be very courageous and, go to a chanting workshop or anything where you can sing along, and not feel judged, and, just sing along and quietly and just participate and just feel your voice. Because I do think your voice is meant to heal parts of you. Your voice in different tones is meant to balance your chakras and, make your spine feel better and uplift you. Your voice is a healing tool. So whatever created the story of your voice not being good enough, maybe examine that, because usually it happens to us when we're very young. We are very young and we didn't even know that we gave our power away to some authority figure, but some judgment came down about our voice and we really internalized it. But my appeal is just please let that story go if you can. And even if you never do it with other people, just humming to yourself, or the 3 ohms that we did in the beginning, just experimenting with what's the middle for me, what's a little bit higher, what's low, and where do I feel that in my body. I mean, that's a beautiful place to start, and you can do that without too much fear or embarrassment when you're alone. But if that can lead to actually going and being with other people and hearing that, it's a wonderful experience. I think it's very healing. Mm-hmm.
I know we could keep talking. I'm just like, such lovely information. And I think the audience will also, I get to see you. So if they're listening to the podcast, they're not seeing the expressions and the way that you speak, but it comes through so beautifully in your voice. And I think that's another illustration of the way that you use sound and the way you use joy in how you share your information. Because even when you went to talk about the accident, you could see where the joy dropped, but how you brought it back. And I'm hoping that the people, as they're listening, to realize just what you can do with your voice and the way that you decide to articulate, and how you can shift the narrative through that voice, because you did it so eloquently all the way through the podcast. So anyway, Clancy, would you share how people can find you and what you might be able to offer them if they're online, just so they know how they might participate with you?
Sure, absolutely. So my website is my name. It's Clancy Cox, ClancyCox.com. And I have a newsletter that you can join. And yeah, online, I'm trying to bring some more online offerings. I am doing in-person chanting workshops. I do work one-to-one as well. So you can email me. You can contact me through the website, or my email address is hello@clancycox.com. And yeah, I mean, online it is better. It is better than nothing. And you can do a lot of healing and learn, simple healing practices online for healing your voice. If you do need something therapeutic because you lose your voice all the time, I have lovely vocal exercises that anyone can do that really do warm and heal the vocal cords. So I'm available online, and if you're in upstate New York, for in-person chanting workshops.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you. And so I always like to finish with some kind of movement pattern. So you want to share something that you'd like to offer to people to consider?
Yes. We were talking about crossing the planes of the body and the spherical cupolas of sound where you use your resonance. So one thing, it's a hula exercise. So you imagine an imaginary hula hoop. At first your feet are together and you're standing with bent knees, and you imagine a hula hoop around your ankles. So you have to be careful. These are very small circles at first, but you're just imagining keeping the hula hoop in motion, and imagine that it's at your ankles. So what that means is your knees are going in tiny little circles, but you can feel it warming up all the bones and tendons and ligaments in your feet. And then you reverse the direction, still at your ankles. And you can start to feel this in your joints. We have over 300 joints in our body. So yeah, many of them in the feet, because more than half the bones of the body are in the feet. Okay. And then you stand up a little bit, and now you've brought the imaginary hula hoop to the knees. So you're moving in circles, and you'll feel you've just done this with your imagination, but doesn't it feel different? Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you're ready, you switch the direction. And it's amazing just by switching this direction how different it feels. Mm-hmm. How different each side feels. Okay. And then you widen your feet to about hip width. And this is where you would normally hula. So you bring the imaginary hula hoop up to your waist and just start small circles. So now you're getting more into the hips, moving the head of the femur around the hips. And, you'll feel if you need to slow down or make the circle smaller, and then reverse the direction. And then, ideally, as you warm up, you kind of make the circles bigger. But this is also wonderful to do if you are at a computer for a lot of the day, just waking up and just becoming more aware of your back body. So the last one, you have to pick a non-moving focal point. In yoga, it's called a dristi. And you bring the imaginary hula hoop up to your neck. And so you start small, and you'll feel, the reason I do this with my singers is that you can feel all the muscles, the abdominal support muscles that you use for breath support. So you keep breathing and then reverse the direction. So for some reason, it is easy to hold the breath, but you don't want to do that. You want to keep breathing. And then there you go. So now you've become aware of the back body, and you've probably used a lot of muscles that you don't use in your daily life, unless you're a kid and you are climbing trees and doing all of the stuff that, you know, kids still do. But yeah, it gives you an awareness, and it gives you more space in the parts of our body that can get more and more and more compressed. So yeah, just makes it easier to breathe. And I have my singers do that before a voice lesson.
Oh, that's wonderful. I do something very similar in Tai Chi.
Oh.
And I have a pattern that I've built, Kundalini Rising, where there's a lot of that spiral. And we use spirals in Tai Chi as well for a lot of the movements. But what's interesting is I would use the foot sensors on the bottom of the foot. So what you just did, imagining the hula hoop, and I thought, I never thought of explaining it that way. But going through different actions with the feet, and the circle around is part of the one for the stomach meridian, which is on the earth element in 5 elements from Chinese medicine. I'm just trying to remember. I think that one's stability, if I remember right, for the reflexes. Yeah, so it's interesting as you were talking about those things. And then you talked about the rising up onto the toes and back down to the flat. And you've got gravity, centering, balance, stability, all of those reflexes coming through the feet, being able to change how the posture functions. So you're doing that within that hula hoop action, which is kind of interesting, and segues so beautifully into what I thought I would share today, which was inviting people to go and check out my video on YouTube. It's in the playlist. It's in the cards where I have the foot reflexes, and you can go through each of the actions. And what happens with those foot reflexes is your posture finds its natural alignment, which I'm sure happens too as you're doing the hula hoop, and everything gets unwound and let go. And then all of a sudden the true posture can come through, not the one that's influenced by stress, where your head starts to look forward, you know, from sitting at your computer or driving in the car, or how the shoulders will curl over. And instead of physically moving your shoulders to squeeze the shoulder blades and open up the chest, instead the foot reflexes just allow it to just happen. So then it's a no effort piece. Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. I love it. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Oh my goodness, it's been so lovely. I truly appreciate it. I hope people will take advantage of those little clips of sound. And I will try to, when I can go through and build the chapters, I'll try to pull those little snippets out. So if people want to come back to it, they have a chance to just practice some of those sounds. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah. If you ever want to do a part 2 where we actually just chant for a longer time so that people can actually experience the heart-brain coherence, I'd love to do that with you.
Okay. It's a date. We're on. So we'll close for today, and we'll leave our audience ready for the next. So that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Clancy.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Be Well with Michelle Greenwell, and this episode has been sponsored by Dance Debut, providing movement programs to create a flourishing lifestyle while achieving your goals and ambitions and enjoying the activities on your bucket list. Also, this time was with Intend to Radiate Tea with Intention, where you can explore the power of tea, water, and intentions for healing. You can find the tea at intend-t.square.site. And Dance Debut is dancedebut.com, where I create resources, workshops, and presentations that ignite the passion for living through wellness and movement tips and tools. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you're going to be singing through your day today. Take care.